Post Office Department was created by the Second Continental Congress on July 26, 1776. The first Postmaster General was Benjamin Franklin. The Post Office Department is one of the largest business concerns in the world. Last year, under Robert Hannigan, it did a gross business of $1,112,877,174.
This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order, letters for the rich, letters for the poor, the shop at the corner of the girl next door, pulling up beat took a steady climb, the gradients against her, but she's on time. Letters of thanks, letters from banks, letters of joy from the girl and the boy, receipted bills and invitations to inspect new stock or to visit relations, and applications for situations and timid lovers, declarations and gossip from all the nations, news circumstantial, news financial, letters with holiday snaps to enlarge in, letters with faces scrawled in the margin, letters from uncles, cousins and aunts, letters to Scotland from the south of France, letters of condolence to Highlands and Lowlands, notes from overseas to Hebrides, written on paper of every hue, the pink, the violet, the white and the blue, the chatty, the catty, the boring, adoring, the cold and official, all the hearts outpouring, clever, stupid, short and long, the typed and the printed and the spelt all wrong. Letters of thanks, letters from banks, letters of joy from the girl and the boy, receipted bills and invitations to inspect new stock or to visit relations, and applications for situations and timid lovers, declarations and
in the center of the pallet, then you just square the pallet up.
James Maurice Gavin, born in 1907 in New York, New York. Raised by his parents, Alan and Jocelyn, he was taught from a young age to be very proud of his country. In November of 1932, he married Janice Harold. They had a happy marriage during which Janice gave birth to 2 children, Tim and Stephanie. Among his favorite pastimes was watching baseball. He had played as a child and was always a die-hard Dodgers fan. In 1937, Gavin decided to pursue a career in the Army. He volunteered for 2 years of training. His family was sad as he marched away. After 2 long years, he finally graduated. He was among the top in his class. In 1941, Gavin was sent to fight in Europe in World War II. He fought mostly in North Africa and Italy. He started off as a major of a ground troop, but soon climbed the ranks to brigadier general. James Gavin was very fortunate in that he came out of the war alive. He was greeted by cheering crowds, but more importantly, his loving family. James had always been fascinated in politics. After the war, he decided to follow his dreams and run for office. He became quite popular and was offered a job as a military attaché, which he accepted. He spent many years as a politician. In fact, it was the occupation he held until retirement. He passed away in 1990. He had had a long and happy life filled with many accomplishments and was truly a hero.
Wherever we go, we carry within us a longing to be at home among all that we have gathered to ourselves, joining us to our past and to our future, to what we wish to leave behind and hope to pass on. Home tethers us to life's larger truths in simple acts of living, reveals our capacity for passion even in the prosaic, and reminds us again and again of what really matters.
The name Mamaroneck comes from the Siwanoy Indian word which means the gathering place, a place where people meet. The following look at history has brought together many people, old and young, from various walks of life, whose common thread is growing up in the town of Mamaroneck. John Richbell, an English merchant from Barbados, bought the land from the Siwanoy Indians in 1661. Later, Richbell sold almost half that land to a Quaker named Samuel Palmer. It wasn't until the early 1900s that the unincorporated area would begin to develop. The first attempts at land development in the unincorporated area of Mamaroneck began in 1853 with the opening of a train station. A group of businessmen proposed a development they named Chatsworth, after the royal estate in England. However, this allusion to grandeur failed to attract buyers. In 1870, land developer Andrew Wilson Jr. proposed building a university modeled after Oxford in England, near the present site of Winged Foot Country Club. The brochure promised prospective buyers a university town of elaborate circular boulevards, a hotel, and up to 100 trains a day for the commute to New York City.
The Grand Park brochure noted that life insurance statistics assert that of those who transact business in the city, the longevity of all who sleep in the country is increased by 15%.
Unfortunately, Wilson didn't have a clear title to much of the property, and his Grand Park subdivision never came to fruition. In 1876, a new dam was built by John T. Goodliff, creating an ice pond. Goodliff Pond supplied ice to summer residents in Larchmont Manor. Friends of the reservoir historian Wallace Irving Jr. explains,
and there was an ice house right on the edge of this pond, and there were ice wagons. This was long before electric refrigerators, folks, and that was the way you kept your meat from spoiling. You had an ice box and a big cube of ice there, and the iceman brought in a big pair of tongs. Anyway, this pond was an ice pond for a long time. And then in 1890s or thereabouts, another gentleman named Charles Murray bought Mr. Goodliff's pond, created a thing called the Larchmont Water Company, and not only cut ice, but began supplying water through pipes that he laid down a road. And the name of that road now is Murray Avenue in the town of Mamaroneck.
at the turn of the century, additional roads were built by Italian immigrant laborers who settled in an undeveloped area which came to be known as Shantytown. This area was bordered on either side by present-day Edgewood Avenue and Lookout Circle. Carl Carpino, often called Uncle Carl, was born in 1908. The son of an Italian immigrant laborer, Uncle Carl recalls his childhood in Shantytown.
The shanties are like barracks. They put top paper around it so that no water gets in. And that's how they got its name, Shantytown. Jack Barnett, he owned the whole neighborhood up there. He used to charge us $1 a year for just staying there. My father worked for the Cisco. He used to be pick and shovel. He used to get 75 cents a day to work from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, 75 cents a day. My right name is Carl John Carpino, but nobody calls me that name. I could go all the way to Syracuse. Hey, Uncle!
Uncle Carl can still be found tending his garden on Rockland Avenue. In 1919, 2-year-old Dick Murphy moved from Brooklyn with his family to the town of Mamaroneck. Long involved in village and town community affairs, Mr. Murphy has been nicknamed Larchmont's unofficial watchdog. During a visit to his childhood home on Edgewood Avenue, Dick Murphy recalled what brought his father to Larchmont.
That sort of thing. And he had 3 children then when we moved here, and he wanted to get out of Brooklyn. So Mrs. Kaiser told him about Larchmont. And so she said this house was for sale, and so my father came up and looked at it, and he bought it for $3,000. And Goodliff Moving Company moved him up here from Brooklyn. Yeah, they were in the moving business and the ice business and so forth. The ice business was flourishing in the old days because the reservoir up there, in the wintertime, they cut ice there and they stored it in a house, and, you know, they used to preserve ice during the summertime those days. I can remember as a youngster going to St. Augustine School, every morning you saw Mr. Crowley come down with ice that he stored up at the reservoir, and he used to take care of the water coolers in the municipal building in Larchmont, pack it with ice, you know, so the water stayed cool. That was before we had refrigeration.
Just as Dick Murphy's father had come to Mamaroneck after World War I, other young couples were seeking country settings in which to raise their children. The increased availability of automobiles, proximity to New York City, and the short railroad commute made the town appealing to prospective buyers. Cyrilda Helgren, Jane Trenholm, and Anna Reisman were among the first of a generation of children to grow up in the woods of Larchmont.
And I'm Jane Trenham, and my maiden name was Jane Bevere. And we came to Larchmont when I was a year old. My father had been in naval aviation during World War I with Ken Whiting, who lived in Larchmont. And when they decided that they should move to the suburbs, Dad said to Mother, well, Ken Whiting lives in a cute little town called Larchmont. Let's go look. So they came and looked, and we ended up at 99 North Chatsworth, which was a dirt road then.
I'm Cerelda Halgren, and lived in Larchmont since 1960. Up on, my dad had a house built on Ridge Road. Anna's house came along shortly afterwards, and we were next door kids growing up together.
I'm Anna Tebow Reisman, and my parents and I and my little sister moved to Larchmont in 1919. And I was 2, and my sister was a new baby.
And one of my other early memories that still, even today, is sort of a nostalgic sound, was that you never went outside that you didn't hear hammering.
Yes,
Because
sure.
they were building all the time.
Right.
There were always a
I
house
think
within
there's a-
earshot being built. And so during the week particularly, whenever you were outside, there was hammering. You heard hammering.
That's true, and by the time we moved away from Springdale Road in 1927, all of the lots had been, not all, almost all of the lots had been filled in on the other side of the street. And it's true, and you two must remember, Cyril, I know that we did this together. As soon as the workmen went home, we would
Go
run
into
over,
the houses,
we would run
yes,
over to the
right.
houses that were
Right.
being built and climb all around and explore, and we, played all those wonderful games of we were a family living in this is your room, and
that's all their friends. And they decided they didn't want to move to a classy, fancy, big neighborhood.
Yeah.
The other thing that Mother told me was that all the yuppies of that day were, the in thing was to show that you'd arrived was to buy a Tudor in Rook and Glen.
Oh, I'm
It
sure
wasn't
Sure.
to buy a Victorian in the Manor the way it is today.
Yeah. What I remember about people delivering things was they all came in carts pulled by horses.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes.
The milk wagons were pulled by horses.
And then there
The
was
ice
this
truck.
ice thing, and we used to run out and eat and get
Ice
the
was
slivers
delivered.
of ice.
Yes, ice was delivered by a truck with horses.
Yeah.
Coal was delivered and sent down a chute into the coal bin in your cellar.
Rockland Avenue was another dirt road.
Yeah, right.
It always seemed as, when we were children, as if you were sort of going up into the woods to the swimming club where they had tennis and
sure.
swimming.
Oh, this is just a first grade class at Murray Avenue. See how we all sit so nice and up straight? That's how it was in the back of the school. Nobody there. Nobody. No woods or houses or anything.
I was in the first kindergarten class at Murray. And our class was the first class that went all through the school.
Right.
Well, I remember I was supposed to go to kindergarten at Chatsworth because Murray wasn't even built. You know, another thing I remember was going to Murray Avenue School from the house on Ridge Road, and the back was Springdale Road where Anna lived, was I would go down Murray Avenue, turn into Glen, and there's a little stairway up there that comes up by the rocking stone.
Yes.
And I would try to go down, run up that stairway, get to the house before the 12 o'clock whistle.
By the end of the 1920s, when Jane, Cyrilda, and Anna had graduated from Murray Avenue School, the neighborhood had grown. An addition was planned for the building. Emil Lanza's father was in charge of the construction.
My name is Emil Lanza. I was born in Mamaroneck, village of Mamaroneck, 82 years ago. In the town of Mamaroneck, we built the addition to Murray Avenue School in approximately 1930-31. Most of the laborers on that job were Italian. But bricklayers, we had a few Irishmen, a few German boys. We more than doubled the size of Murray Avenue School when we built it. And I remember I was a water boy on that job. I was a little boy. And I used to go for water at the well. And I used to bring water to the men. And what I used to do is I used to put lemons in it and make lemonade out of the water. In other words, we had like a pail, like about a three-gallon pail of water, and I would take it and put lemons in it and put sugar in it. The men used to love that. The bricklayers, the plasters, the laborers, and at the end of the week, when they got paid, they used to give me all the change in their envelopes, and I was making nearly as much as they were.
Recently, former and current staff met to talk about the school Emil Lanza helped to build. Walter Koop is the former principal of Murray Avenue School. Joanne Stack is the former assistant principal. Terry Rinaldi currently teaches first grade. Nancy Lerner is a former Murray Avenue teacher. Although Joyce Papazian claims Chatsworth Avenue as her alma mater, she is thrilled to have taught at Murray Avenue for 27 years.
I came here as a child. I went to elementary school here, kindergarten through 6th grade, then went on to the high school, and I came back here to teach in 1969. And the reason I wanted to become a teacher is the person who was sitting here on my left, Joanne Stack. I was fortunate enough to have her as a 3rd grade teacher and was mesmerized by everything she did in the room, especially the way she dressed. Always, you were so immaculate, Joanne. And then she'd come in and she'd take off her little shoes and put the little loafers on, the penny loafers, which we loved.
Miss Hirschbeck was the first principal here.
Yes, she was the original principal when they built the building. When I was principal, we put the trees in out here, just to give a little shade to this end of the building. And of course, that field was just a dirt field out there in my years as a teacher here. And it used to be a problem at lunchtime. The kids would come in from lunch hour pretty dirty after playing softball or whatever they were playing out there, football. And so that's when they decided, I guess, to pave it. I can remember a young fellow who I had in 6th grade, and he was a fine athlete. And when we were on the playground at lunchtime, and I don't think he was doing this on purpose, but he was able to kick a football over the roof of the school. I mean, I've never seen a 6th grader be able to kick a ball as high and as far as he could. And his name was Billy Van Heusen. And Billy ended up being a tight end for the Denver Broncos.
Remember you and I did a colonial
Day, right. This place was like just jumping the whole hallway. We were dressed in costumes. And, I remember Mrs. Brandt came and we made these lanterns out of tin, the old colonial lanterns. We did cooking. It was phenomenal what the parents really supported us with. I remember they did something at night, the PTA, and it was
with the parents, right?
With the parents, and the parents dressed up. My father, there were about 7 men that got dressed up with can-can dances and came out and did can-can. I remember on the stage, I was so embarrassed. But it was, they did these kind, it was fun. It was a fun thing that they would do at night with the parents. I remember sending kids to Walter Koop's office and they'd be coming out with lollipops. So I don't know what magic.
Well, you know what?
You were weaving
I
in
heard,
there.
you know, that story really, I think, got out of hand. I suspect I did give kids lollipops. I think I have to thank Mrs. Boldera, though.
Oh,
I think she really, she was the secretary at that time, and she was a lot of fun. And so I think, you know, between Julie Boldera and myself, I think.
Y'all got a lollipop, right?
Yeah, we wanted
we
everybody to know we were a friendly office.
We were all very supportive of each other and of the school system. We always felt it was the best school, and I think we still do.
And it's been a wonderful life to have had and to have experienced. I got up in the morning every day and said, you know, I like doing what I'm doing, and I like going to work. And it was fun.
Lips that touch liquor must never touch mine.
There was no liquor until
1932.
My parents never had any liquor in the house. In fact, some of my family relatives disapproved of it very strongly, but my father believed
I think the climate that we grew up in, regardless of whatever our political opinions are today, was a fairly conservative climate. I think.
But was Abe Levine's a speakeasy?
Abe Levine.
I think it was.
You're right.
I think it was.
Right.
Abe Levine's was a speakeasy.
Then, of course, Larchmont Tavern.
Yeah.
They had, and I can always remember my father saying, don't go in Larchmont Tavern, or don't go in Abe Levine's, you know.
I mean, after,
they
in
came
the
from
30s
all
and 40s, people came from all over to
Oh,
go there
right.
for meals
To go to
because
Abe
it was
Levine's,
very well
right.
known for its, the cuisine was excellent.
Right.
And so it turned into sort of a gourmet restaurant.
Right.
And, but you could always tell the people who came from New York, because they were always sort of dressed up. And we always would, look like we came off a boat or something.
In 1937, 6-year-old Charles Lang moved into a house designed by his uncle, George Fernschchild, in the enclave known as Howell Park. Howell Park was created in 1906 out of the farmland estate of Cecilia Howell. Originally an inn, the Howell farmhouse was purchased in the mid-1800s by Cecilia's uncle, Thomas Palmer, a descendant of one of the town's original settlers. Palmer remodeled the inn to include a ballroom. Here he hosted elegant parties and theatrical presentations. My name is Charles Lang, and I'm at 60 Carleon Avenue, which is in Howell Park, which is in, well, we think of ourselves as being in Larchmont. Larchmont Phone, Larchmont Post Office is, of course, the unincorporated town of Mamaroneck. The town of Mamaroneck didn't have much of an identity, to be honest with you. I mean, we never thought of there being a town of Mamaroneck. We knew there was a village of Mamaroneck up there that we never went to. We knew there was a village of Larchmont where our life was centered. In many respects, the place hasn't, the neighborhood hasn't changed. All the other houses, excepting for the house next door, were here when this house was built. So some of them go back to turn of the century or before. My great-grandmother used to come out from the city back in the 30s, and she said, it's so wonderful to see the sky again. No pollution. Now, we did pollute, of course. My father would always burn the leaves in the fall. It was a wonderful odor. I know it's terrible for the ecology, but nostalgically, I miss the odor. You know, he'd pile up great piles of leaves, and then we'd jump into them before he burned them. It was fun. The milkman actually delivered milk, and it wasn't homogenized. So in the morning, you went out in the back stoop, and there were bottles of, on a cold winter's day, frozen milk. Well, that meant that all that wonderful heavy cream, heavier than any cream you've ever seen in the store, popped the top out, and you had about an inch of that pure heavy cream on the top, which you could spoon off and eat like ice cream, only much better.
I see 1/3 of a nation ill-housed, ill-clad, ill-nourished.
As I say, it was the depth of the Depression. And in those days, almost all the mothers in the neighborhood were housewives. And people couldn't afford nursery schools. And so there were lots of kids running around the neighborhood playing with each other.
A lot of your friends' fathers were out of jobs, and some of the houses were on the market, and there got to be so many houses on the market that they finally made a rule that they weren't going to put signs up. And that's where that originally came from, the idea of not having for sale signs on houses, was because it looked like the whole town was for sale. But also, it was kind of looked down upon to flaunt. I mean, you know, if your house had a few shabby things in it or needed some redecorating, you really just didn't, even if you could afford it, you weren't going to do it, because if some of your friends whose husbands were out of jobs were to come for tea, it would look, you know, you'd be embarrassed, or you'd feel like you were flaunting it.
People did try to help each other. A society called the Larchmont Aid Society was formed. And I think it was originated by Dr. Russell at the Larchmont Avenue Church. And it had a board of people in the community, and they would hear of people who needed help, and it was all done privately and confidentially.
The Depression was over because of the war. The war took care of the Depression.
Okay, then World War II came. We had scrap metal collections. We went around with our little wagons collecting metal for the metal drives. We had our victory gardens, which didn't work very well because there were more rabbits than vegetables by the end of the season. I can also remember going down to the train station here and watching these unbelievable freight trains loaded with tanks and all sorts of military stuff, counting the trains. They went forever, over 100 cars to a train, carrying military equipment. One of the lovely things about the war was the gasoline ration. Now, my father didn't think so, but there were almost no cars. And as a kid, age 10, 12, 14, I could bicycle any place I wanted on the Post Road, Larchmont Avenue, hardly a car. The streets were almost mine. It was lovely. And also, probably tied in with the lack of cars, or functioning cars, down back here, we have Highwood Way, which is a very steep street. And we had a good snow. The police would come along with their barriers, and they would just block off Devon Road down here at the bottom of the hill. And everybody in the area would be sledding down this wonderful high street.
When the VJ Day came, and everybody was dancing in the streets and everything, and remember Webb Farrell?
No.
He came and met me at the hospital and said, "Oh, we've got to celebrate." And so we went into Abe Levine's, and the place was absolutely mobbed.
Cool.
And the whole street was mobbed. I mean, everybody was just, everybody in town was out there dancing around in the streets and, singing, and it was really quite a day.
Very exciting. Great day, right.
The town provided a Dick and Jane backdrop for children growing up in the 1950s. Sisters Carol Bradshaw Aiken and Marilyn Bradshaw Houston were two such children.
Okay, I'm Carol Bradshaw Aiken, and I grew up in Larchmont. As a matter of fact, I grew up in this house. And my sister?
With me, Marilyn Bradshaw Houston. And yeah, we have many happy memories from this house, this living room, and Larchmont, and our community.
We both attended Murray Avenue School, which is only 2 blocks away. And it was a wonderful neighborhood to grow up in. Have a lot of happy memories of Murray, and a lot of happy memories of the neighborhood and the kids.
It was much more formal in the 50s and 60s when we were little girls growing up, and to church or to parties. I mean, you wore these really fancy party dresses and your fancy flats, and you were taught good manners, and it just, you had great respect for and were intimidated by adults.
Life was formal.
And it was formal. No, when we were really little, the kids would hang out at Walters, but not the Walters in Mamaroneck, the one in Larchmont.
There was a Walters
at the foot of Murray Avenue.
In Chatsworth Garden Apartments. It was built in as a little newspaper novelty shop, candy store.
Comic books.
Right.
Everybody, all the kids went there because that was where you got all this neat stuff that you needed, comic books, candy, gum, and toys.
Right.
And you could even get presents for your mother.
We remember the most wonderful little railroad station that was the Larchmont station before the thruway came through.
And it was always a big deal to go shopping in New York on the train.
It was probably our biggest excitement, that we'd have day to days when we got to go into New York City in the train and going into that little station and climbing up these monster steps up to that train as it came in.
In the mid-1950s, Larchmont's beautiful train station was demolished to make way for the New England Thruway. The Larchmont Railroad Station had been built in 1888 as a showcase for the New York, New Haven, and Hartford line. Charles Peter Clark, the president of the line, who summered in Larchmont Manor, commissioned a Gothic-style brick and granite building. The interior was finished in highly polished mahogany, was adorned with an English tiled fireplace, and the windows were made out of cathedral glass.
And you remember going to New York?
Yes.
Driving to New York? That was a real hassle.
I remember going in on the train.
On the train, that's what I remember too.
And
right.
that was for a shopping expedition
Yeah.
when we needed clothes for school. Usually, when I was quite small, my mother would take my sister and me on the train, and we would go into Grand Central and then walk to the department stores. Everything was sent home COD.
Best and Company was in Mamaroneck.
Right.
And and Best and Company they were sort of the Gap of today, of our day. The clothes were sort of all alike. And when I got old enough to have dates where we'd go to New York, we used to go to hear the big bands and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
In
Or
the
down
city.
at Glen Island. of
Yes,
course.
or Glen Island.
Glen
and
Island
stuff.
was the
But
big
if we
thing.
came out late on the train, my father got a hold of one taxi driver that he liked very much and felt was very reputable. And this taxi driver, Dad had a charge account with him, and he paid him extra whenever he picked us up, if we were taking the train, to bring us home first, so my mother wouldn't worry.
People still continue to flock to Mamaroneck because of the convenient railroad commute to New York. Alton Tobey, a world-renowned artist who moved to the town in 1954, immortalized the Westchester commuter in a mural at the Westchester County Courthouse.
I did a mural for the county courthouse. It's 25 feet by 11 on canvas and glued to the wall. It starts in 1609 with Henry Hudson cruising up the river and ends with a commuter car in the lower right-hand corner in which someone looking pretty nearly like me is holding a pellet. But here, on a slightly larger scale, is O'Rourke, Lou Bacardi, the AP man, Rockefeller, Cuomo, and people would say to me, well, why aren't I in it? And I would tell them, you're in the car behind. Westchester without a commuter car, train, is improbable. Oh, skating. Oh, that was a big thing, was skating down in the duck pond.
They used to park the cars all around the pond and let the lights go into the pond. And the people would skate at night.
Oh, we went ice skating when we were kids. My dad would take us to the duck pond, and there would always be parents and kids out ice skating. And,
That's where I learned ice skating.
yeah.
Oh, in those days, there was one pizzeria in this part of Westchester. I mean, now they're every place. I don't know how many Larchmont has today. But there was one halfway between Larchmont and Urshel on the Post Road. This was really very exotic food. I mean, most of us had never had pizza. And all of a sudden, this pizzeria turned up. And we used to go down there and gorge after the movies and say, I could eat pizza and die happily. Another place we'd like to go was Rudy's Barge. Drinking age was 18 in those days. Rudy's Barge was off-shore road on the way to Pelham Manor. You went down Urshel on Shore Road, and you made a turn at a gas station, went down a steep little hill and around the corner. And there was this old barge moored. It was there for years and years and years. And this is where teenagers went because they weren't very fussy about carting people. And you went into Rudy's Barge, and we thought it was very exotic because it was illegal. But basically, what you were getting was a large pitcher of beer for 75 cents and a chance to see your friends and socialize. Recently, the class of 1946 reunited and shared their memories at their 50th high school reunion.
My name's Bill Coughlin. Went to all the Mamaroneck school systems, graduated in 1946. Very unusual class because we went through during World War II And at 13 and 14, some of us were messengers for the civil defense. If you were a Boy Scout, at night when they had the air raid drills and everybody blacked out, you went to a corner and took messages from one station to another.
The best fun, I was on the cheering squad, and that was the best part. I mean, I would have gone to school just to go to the football games and be on the cheering squad. We beat New Rochelle the first time, I guess, that we'd ever played them. We had a conga line through the middle of Larchmont. We stopped all the traffic. We weren't allowed off school grounds. We had to, you were there until you got through at 3. But we'd sit on the steps coming down towards Walters, and of course we'd cheat and sneak over. So one time we went over and 3 of us got ice cream containers, you know. And the dean of girls ended up at the top of the stairs. We had to put them in our bags, and she stayed through the whole lunch hour. We had to go into school with melted ice cream in the bags because we didn't dare take it out.
Betty Farr was voted the most popular girl at Mamaroneck High School, but she suffered from leukemia on and off all through the high school years, and died the night we graduated, but her parents and the teachers didn't tell anybody in the class until the next day, so as not to spoil the graduation. She was just such a fabulous person. I mean, none of us will ever forget her.
During the 50s, we had air raid drills, and we would have this threat of nuclear harm coming to us from this attack just poured into us, and maybe once a month or so we would have a drill, and you'd have to go out in the hall and kneel down and put your hands over your head.
All classes.
And, as if that would do any good, you know, with radiation. But we lived with that constant threat, and yet somehow it wasn't real. But when Kennedy was shot, it was like something bad really can happen. It's not just this threat that grown-ups worry about, you know. And it was like that just happy, carefree innocence of the 50s and early 60s just ended like that.
Yeah. When Kennedy was shot, I was in gym at Mamaroneck High School. And I was in 10th grade, and Dr. McLean's voice came over the PA and announced first that he had been shot and that they were awaiting details. They didn't hurt any more than that. And the devastation in that high school was staggering.
Well, I was in high school. I graduated in '68, so Vietnam was very much an issue in that late 60s and when I was in high school, and it got to be more and more so as we went along, and there was some polarization amongst the kids in the high school.
During the Vietnam era, there were a number of anti-war protests here in town. And the town, like every other community in the nation, was deeply divided on the issue. When the Memorial Day Parade took place, which started down on Larchmont Avenue, came down Larchmont, up Palmer, and across the bridge and over to the Memorial by Murray Avenue, a number of college students and a few adults decided that they would wear black armbands and march in protest of the war. They had everybody lined up and marching off. The last thing in line before they let us in, which they did under pressure, they didn't want to let us in, were the fire engines. So we were forced to march behind the fumes of about 6 fire engines. And every policeman in Larchmont kept roaring by on motorcycles as loudly as they could to drown out those who were trying to speak on behalf of the peace movement. You know, it was interesting. I mean, it certainly divided the nation and therefore the community. But, you know, there was some real deep friendships and fellowship that developed amongst those who were involved and concerned about the anti-war peace movement. Made some very good close friends in those days. The turbulent 60s didn't diminish Mamaroneck's love for football. In the 1978-79 season, Mamaroneck High School had a winning team. the undefeated Dream Team.
We used to dwell, we've dwelt on these days for so many years now.
See, the thing is, Mamaroneck went so long without a football team. The town went so long without a decent football team. And then we came along, and we just, like, the whole town was just in a total, like, uproar.
We were a bunch of group of kids that grew up together. Actually, it was like 2 or 3. Like, we were, like, in our section in Richbell Road, and there was a couple up towards Mamaroneck Avenue, the Harbor Heights. And we all finally got together, put a good team together.
We had a coach named Mike Sedano, I believe. He's the head director of the Apple program at Mamaroneck High School. He had this song, The Impossible Dream, that he started playing at the beginning of, I would say, our summer camp before our senior year in football. And we kind of listened to that song every practice, before every game. It's called The Impossible Dream. So we kind of took that song and projected it into our season, and that's how it became a dream team.
I remember what the cheerleaders used to do. They'd make a big banner, and then we'd hold it
and we'd break
on
through it,
either end, and when the football team made their entrance, and they'd all charge to break through the sign first. That was
David Romanelli leading the way.
Well, besides the cheerleading team, we also had twirlers, and we also had a mascot, which was the tiger, our big tiger outfit that usually was very warm, but we'd always get somebody in there, and they'd wear the whole outfit, and they'd kind of run around and rile the crowd up, and that was our mascot. That was always a lot of fun.
You could get, when we were youngest, when we had first moved into, at least when I first moved into the neighborhood, you can get 3 hamburgers, a small soda, and a small French fry for 99 cents.
99 cents. So
99
you got a penny
cents.
back.
Yeah, you got a penny back.
I remember.
With the scratch-off tickets and the golden arches.
You know what depressed me is when they changed the old McDonald's. We had the original.
Yeah, with the arches.
Oh, that was a big thing.
During high school, when we were younger, we had the original McDonald's arches.
The golden arches.
And they took it down and they built that thing. And I'll tell you, the burgers never tasted the same.
This project has brought together people who span 90 years of town history.
You could make the remark that Mamaroneck is a wonderful place to call home.
Children's party in the fall, and all the kids would decorate their bicycles and put on costumes and ride around the block, the police car leading them with the lights flashing and the sirens going.
Now, I remember Sundays after church when the weather was nice, and particularly in the spring when it was starting to get nice, we would stop on the way home from church sometimes to feed the ducks.
Oh, yes, right.
Dr. Clarissa Pincola Estes, author of The Gift of the Story, has written, "The tales people tell one another weave a strong fabric that can warm the coldest emotional or spiritual nights." Thanks to all who shared their stories.
Mr. and Mrs. Muhammad Ali.
This is a very special homecoming for me. I grew up in Larchmont. I graduated from Mamaroneck High School and received my diploma on this very stage 33 years ago. I have great respect for the manner in which this community responded to the anti-Semitic vandalism, which occurred earlier this year.
I would like to know what made Muhammad want to become a boxer.
I think you all know the story of when Muhammad was 12. He went to a little bazaar in Louisville and he had a branded bicycle he had gotten for Christmas. And he had parked the bicycle outside the little bazaar, and when he came back to get it, it was gone. And he was so angry that he wanted to beat up whoever did it.
In third place, and the winner of the savings bond, Jesse Holland. Our second prize winner, please come up, Noriko Kagura. Please, a big round of applause for the grand prize winner and my new employee, Patricia Stringle.